It's Trends O'Clock. This is Trends KE with KK Cedric.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Trends KE. It's yet another episode, and tonight we are having a little bit of a change. We shall be starting straight from our conversation on the youth and politics, youth agenda in politics 2022. This is Trends KE. So leo tunaanza na nyuma tukienda mbele. After we are done with this awesome conversation, I'm having great gentlemen in the studio. Then we will be heading into our week's trending topics. So tonight on the show, I am having three guests. As always, we are having on the show, and my producer will be bringing them up. My producer coming to you all the way from India, Don Jaka, doing his work behind the scenes. We are having our lawyer and political commentator, Nelson Mandela. He is always tuning into the show. Very great having you on the show, Nelson. Thank you for honoring our invitation tonight. We are also having all the way from Hungary, Tiberius Okanga will be joining us as well. And then later on, or I don't know if we are already having him on the show, we shall also be joined by Duncan, who will be coming to us live, and I can see he's already there, very ready for this conversation. Duncan all the way from Belgium. We are having Tiberius all the way from Hungary. Both of them master's students, great brains on the show tonight, and our lawyer and political commentator, Nelson Mandela. Guys, welcome to the show. So first, I will start with our guest yeye ndio atatusaidia kuintroduce hao wengine, and first of Nelson, as we introduce the rest of the guests on the show, just one question. We have had the Pandora's Papers saga going around, and my question to you, even behind the scenes before we got to the screen, was: do you think as the media we have done justice to that story?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cedric. Thank you for having me once again. And to our viewers, as I had promised last time, we'll always engage, and we feel the need of informing one another, discussing things that are pressing to us, and therefore, when need be, when called upon, we'll always come and discuss and let the questions come. And now, Cedric, if I was to address the question, the report, whether our media houses have done justice to the Pandora's Papers, I can tell you, had we had independent media stations, they would have highlighted the situation. But the only thing that is happening, which is a sad thing, media houses are supposed to be on the front line of fighting for democracy, fighting against societal ills, highlighting and informing people. But what is happening is that we have what we call state capture. Media houses cannot dare talk about what is happening, knowing very well that this government has been ruthless. It's not just the law they're breaking, even the very tenets of democracy, they've always been trying to suppress it for the past 9 years they've been in power. And therefore, it's a sorry state that the media houses that are supposed to be informing us independently are given manuals on what to highlight and what not to highlight. Unfortunately, we are only reading about Pandora Papers from online and seeing it from international media houses, and yet our very own local media stations that are supposed to be highlighting these things to the language that can be understood by Mama Mboga or my grandmother in the village, unfortunately, it's not happening. You know, we'd rather talk about which pastor is sitting where, which politician is suing his wife, but you cannot highlight things touching on corruption. Having 3.3 billion in a single account or a single investment offshore, so not criminal, but there are some serious questions. If you are the president, don't feel secure investing in your own country as a president, then who else should?
Wow, yeah, that's a story that is still developing, and we are waiting for the president to get back. But now, getting into our conversation, let me bring in our very fresh guests. First off, let me start with you, Dan, all the way from Belgium. First, will you be voting in the coming elections? Just in any case that you'll be still in Hungary, has the IPC provided any means by which the diaspora in where you are can be able to vote in the forthcoming election?
Well, thank you very much, Cedric. Um, First of all, I'm very happy to be on this show tonight.
Yeah,
And
welcome.
with my colleagues, I think we have some important issues we need to discuss. Straight to your question, whether I'll be voting next year, I think if there are mechanisms in place that will allow us to vote, then why not? Because as a citizen, it's very important that you vote. It's a
Yeah,
democratic civic right for every citizen to vote, because this is the only time you get to, choose your leaders, to exercise your democracy. So, well, if there are mechanisms in place, why not? I will vote. But so far, uh, there is no communication whatsoever whether people from the diaspora, especially in Europe, will be voting. But if they will, then I'll vote.
yeah. Thank you very much for those starting sentiments, Dan. Then let me bring in our other guest here, Okanga, coming all the way from Hungary. Okanga, from the information I have received, the communication that was made is that there are diasporas which are allowed to vote because they have reached a given number of people who are residing there, and then that means that the rest shall not be voting because they are either few in the nation where they are habited. Do you think this is fair in such a digital era, especially to the youth? Because we live in a mobile society, but then there are so many restrictions. Why do we have such restrictions, especially when it comes to elections in Kenya?
Thank you, Mona, host, and
Yeah,
thank you for allowing me to be part of this useful and wonderful discussion this evening.
yes.
Once more, my name is Tiberius Okanga. I'm a Kenyan. Now, on the issue of diaspora votes, I think a lot has not been done in our nation and on the electoral system. So far, if I'm not wrong, the statistics from the 2017 election, there were only around, what was the total number of diaspora voters globally, if you can remember?
Diaspora,
It
diaspora voters.
was,
I don't have the actual
It
figure
was
right now.
I
4,000.
think, I think it was less than a
It
million.
was
Actually, less than a half a million.
it was way much less, way much less.
Yeah.
And you tell me how many Kenyans live abroad? Very many, and they will want to participate. So there are certain restrictions which have been put in by the government. I don't know whether it is in terms of the international relations. I don't know whether it is in terms. I don't know. I don't know the basis of that. But I think a lot, just like the US and the stuff, we are in the developing world, and the world is really a world of technology. If other countries
Yeah,
can do elections electronically, yet they are at home, they are not away, and they do the elections electronically. So it means if the system is well managed and good preparations, enough preparations are made way before the elections, any person who is out of the country and will wish to vote should be given an opportunity to vote, because that is
yeah,
a democratic right wherever the person is. In fact, the issue of quorum should not be an issue.
yeah, exactly.
The issue of having
Thank you.
quorum, these people are in this country, they don't form a quorum to form this number. That should be the minimal issue to stop people from voting. If our servers are in Europe, servers in Kenya are in Europe, then why don't you allow those who are in Europe to vote as a bloc?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. And actually, on that point, Mr. Mandela, we are having very many restrictions and laws, and even you will get to know that there are there are very many what do they call them? on our voting papers more than we have on the currency. Like it's treated like something with a lot of concern, and unlike other elections. And recently, it was discovered that actually Kenya is using the highest, like it's the second highest in them using money in elections and the whole electoral process than any other country in the world, not just in Africa. Is it an issue of trust that we have with each other?
Yes, Cedric.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Kenya normally acts as a third world country when it comes to every other thing other than the election. When we come to elections, we want to do elections as expensive as other developed countries. We even beat developed countries when we are running, we are organizing elections. See how bloated our National Assembly is, our two houses of parliament. See how bloated our county is, because when IEBC is doing procurement, they're saying they want 43.5 billion to organize an election, and they can be able to tabulate and say, we want this because of 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Does this country, does our budget, do we need 290 constituencies really? Do we need to have MCAs? And do we equally need to have county executive officers? Do we need to have members of parliament, and then we double up having 21 cabinet secretaries? Do we need to have electing the president, and then we elect the deputy president, and then we elect governors, and then we come elect senators, women representatives, we elect governors and all these MCAs? We are making our elections very expensive, and that money is always found because equally IEBC, and that's why we'll hear them being summoned to answer some procurement questions, because when somebody is doing a budgetary tabulation of how much we need for a ballot paper, in Kenya, the prices are always doubled. When we are doing procurement, we are doing procurements for Kim's kit. We are doing procurements for these lamps and gas cylinders during election time. We award these tenders to people, inflate the prices. We do not need to have an election costing us 43.5 billion when we don't have enough vaccines, when we don't have enough classes, when we don't have enough hospitals and dispensaries, when our members of parliament are using 43 billion to elect are going to steal from us. We need to rethink about how we organize election. We need to make it as
Cedric,
possible.
if I may come in.
Yes, sure, Dan.
Let me just finish, and then you come in a second.
No.
When IBC is telling us a member of parliament should not use more than 5 million to campaign, a member of parliament, should not use more than 50 million. If you tabulate the salary of a member of parliament after serving for 5 years, is really above 50 million. How do you end up using 50 million to campaign for you to make 60 million? Because this person knows, I used 50 million to get into this position, and then they'll never see a single penny from the CDF. They'll be in control of 110, 150 million for the next 5 years. And these people used money to campaign. They want to use our resources to recover the money they lost.
And Wakili, I want us to move on. So you will be brief, Dan, so that we can get into this conversation exactly about the youth and the agenda that we have getting into 2022. Briefly, Dan.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with what Nelson is saying. Lawyers have a way of saying the constitution is very clear.
Very clear.
That is their. I mean, it's an international term. But having said that, let me say we have a lot of security features being invested on the ballot boxes and the entire voting system in Kenya, which totally it's a good thing. Largely, it's a good thing. But if you look at it alternatively, you realized either this is an avenue for swindling of public funds. Some people are exaggerating the features and papers. I mean, you find people going all the way to China, Asia. They are going to print ballot papers from there. Or you find them somewhere in Europe, like my friend Okanga said, procuring some Kim's kits from there. These are things that can actually be manufactured by Kenya, by the Kenyan youth. And I think that is why actually we need to have this conversation, because for a long time we've been taken for a ride that people just come up with figures they have, manufactured, and they tell us this election is going to cost this much. In essence, it doesn't cost that much. If, for instance, you go down to the ratio of how much money is allocated per voter in Kenya, that is, if you take the list of registered voters and then you divide by the total amount the IBC is allocating to the election, the
Yeah.
figure is so high. But again, as I finish, there is this famous phrase that people say it's very easy for the Kenyan government or whatsoever, I don't know if the political class, to get a ballot box in the interior and the remotest of villages in Kenya, anywhere in Kenya. But the same people cannot deliver a mask, for instance, that costs 10 shillings to people in Turkana. So you look at this, these are just kind of twisted, ideas, such that their priority is the vote. So when they
Yeah.
look at you, the Kenyan citizen, they are seeing a statistic, they're seeing a vote. They're not seeing a human being that we need your vote so that we can serve you. Because if that was the reason, I tell you, the same way they will invest more money in election, the same way they will struggle to make sure a ballot box is in Kazonzweri, in Ukambani, or in somewhere in Coast, everywhere in Kenya. It will be the same effort they will use to make sure all the communities in Kenya are equally, receiving the national cake. The roads are big done, people are receiving water, the electricity connectivity is everywhere. As I talk to you now, my village does not have electricity. Why? But my MP will come in a few
Yes.
months' time from now and say, uh, I've started procuring electric poles. If you elect me, this thing will be done. So it's just a game, but I think that's why we are having this conversation. This is a great starting point, and we can do things alternatively.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of starting point, Okanga, I want you to help us here. We are coming from a starting point where we are having the highest percentage of the population, which also translates into voters, being the youth, people under the age of 35. Some are voting for their first time, some are just turned 18. But then these youth, some of them are not interested in politics. How are we supposed to package this message? And what exactly would you tell the youth that is the importance of them getting to go and register as voters, not just register, but make sure that on the election day they go and elect their leaders as well?
Thank you, Bwana KK. In regards to the same question, I'll also ask the questions which will go unanswered. Tell me,
Yeah.
a depressed youth, what will he think of? Tell me, an employed mwenye hana kazi, what will he think of? Someone who has struggled to go to the university, someone who has struggled to finish, let's say someone who has struggled to finish Form 4 and has no opportunity to proceed with to further his education. Tell me, which interest? What are his interests? That is the first line. That is why we must first base our arguments. That is why you realize the bigger percentage of the people who have registered in the name of youths, it is 1 out of 10 who is interested in this politics and who is deeply into this politics of the 2022 or whatever, the general politics. Why? Because they are struggling to meet the ends meet. Someone has completed the campus, no employment, the family is looking up to you. The whole village knows this fellow completed the university, so you know the expectations, right?
Yeah.
So one thing is struggling to get money in his pockets. That is the main thing. Tell me, if he goes and shouts, hustler, hustler, if I go and shout, Baba, Baba, will that come and pay my rent in Kayole or Kawangware? It will never. So that is why you realize most of the youth, they just, let me say, they see, because all they want is money. All they want is how will they get money so that their livelihood can be improved. That is the main point. So out of the one out of the 10 who are actively involved in politics in the country, uh, I've seen most of my peers, my friends whom I left in campus. They are already mobilizing people to register for votes. They want to vie for the MCA post, and I'm really happy for them. I like that spirit, and I wish them all the best. But it is 1 out of 10. Today, if you go into most houses of these youths, you see, they live so well. They are not employed. They sustain the economy of Naivasha without employment. At what point or at what time will this person, you want him to say, now I want to actively change the political system, the agenda, which is there? It is impossible. So the political approach by the youth must be looked keenly this time around, because it is not the same. And most of the people, by the way, they will not participate in the election because they'll say it is useless. It is useless to some of them. They'll vote yes. So after that, it is the person who is voted who will benefit. That is democracy. Let us not abuse those who will not vote. It is democracy. You vote for an individual, the individual benefits more than you. That is the law of nature anyway. So we can't go against nature. But then, how do we empower them? How will we make them know that this is the right thing? At least when a youth speaks and says, this is what we want. And if it is one youth, it will not be noise. But if there are 10,000 youths, it will be a movement.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that response, Okanga. And let me bring in our lawyer. And the first thing I will ask you, Mandela, is, do we have a youth vote in Kenya, like in the States or in other developed democracies like Germany? We have France, who are also getting into an election very soon. We are having England. They talk of a youth vote because the youth are influenced to vote in a certain direction. You saw what happened also during the election of Obama. There is a youth vote. Do we have a youth vote in Kenya?
Yes, thank you, Cedric. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Approximately 75% of our population is their youth, you know. And
Wakili, just before you proceed, I'm talking of it in this perspective that there is a youth in Nyanza, there is a youth in Mount Kenya, in central Kenya, there is a youth in Rift Valley, there is a youth in Western. Are those youth having the same agenda to vote to as youth, or will they vote like a youth in Kisumu? Is it that obvious that a youth in Kisumu will vote for Raila? A youth in Rift Valley will obviously vote for Ruto, and a youth in Western, for instance, will obviously vote for Mudavadi? Or is there a youth vote that the youth will come together and vote for a certain agenda?
yes, thank you, Cedric. Now, I can tell you with certainty and without fear of contradiction, there is nothing like a youth vote in Kenya. I'll say that basing on the previous elections. I want to give us, the youthful population, the benefit of doubt that henceforth or towards the next general election and in future, we'll probably have a youth vote. Because Cedric, probably this is the first time you are having us on the show, or probably this is the first time you're discussing this and all your guests are youthful. And should we agree that we are not going to vote for Mudavadi because I'm from Viga and is my neighbor? I'm not going to vote for William Ruto because my girlfriend comes from Rift Valley. And I'm not going to vote for whoever from Central Kenya because my second girlfriend comes from there. But you're going to agree and tell these people, this is what we stand for. Let me tell you one of the reasons why, in as much as we are 75% of the population, almost around 7.5 of us are in parliament or in leadership position. Because number one, the elite and the rich in this country, even if I won't go far, just look at the Mount Kenya Foundation, which is an amorphous group of which I don't believe there is such a thing, only formed towards an election. There is no difference between the Mount Kenya Foundation and the shaggy, ugly looking people we saw in 2017, 2013 called Nairobi Business Community. These are groupings that only happen toward the election to hoodwink people and create an impression and a fallacy that we are going to endorse a person. If you're having Mount Kenya Foundation, what stops other people from regrouping in Western Kenya and having Mulembe Nation Foundation? Others from Nyanza having Nyanza Foundation. We end up having amorphous groups that are power brokers with their vested interest only proposing what they know is fit for them to win tenders in the next government. To go back to my question, we are going to say this.
Yeah.
The moment we'll understand that we are 75% of the population of this country is the moment we realize that there can be something called a youth vote, and it's the moment we'll have our own irreducible minimum for these elites, for this older generation politicians, for these established politicians, so that we tell them we are coming to this table and this is our demand. For us to vote for you as the youthful population of this country, we want 1, 2, 3. But at the moment the election in this country remains based on money, based on party tickets, nominations, based on established politicians, you must be loyal and pray or kneel to some characters, political gods, will never have a youthful vote in this country. So we need to realize that we are the majority. And should we form an alliance and get to understand the power that we have, then these people will come looking for us. Should we not elect one of us? Should we not elect one of us? We'll elect one of them who will have our irreducible minimums that he'll promise to implement. Because if you have the numbers and we elect you and you fail to fulfill, and we are 75%, even the power of recall, we can recall you back. So the only thing we need to realize, we don't have a youthful population vote in this country, but we have the number that we can be able to push these people into a corner and give them our conditions. And if they fail to listen to our conditions and fulfill, then we can elect one of us that will trust and know at least we'll have one of us implementing what we send them to implement.
Thank you. And speaking of conditions, this is where I'll bring in Dan, who is coming to us live all the way from Belgium. Dan, we are having, I was actually following politics in Germany as they were doing their elections recently, and they were both speaking of ideas. I was watching their interviews, and they will very few times mention personalities, like the way we are used to mentioning personalities here in Kenya. And it happened that very many of the youths, a good percentage of them, voted for the Green Party, which is to do with the environment. So to them, the environment is what is key right now. In Kenya, do you think we have gotten to that place where, as youth, we can have a common agenda to which we can vote both in the local politics, in the counties, as well as the national politics, voting for the presidency? And do you think there is any candidate who is coming up with such ideas that can be able to pull the youth?
Well, thank you very much once again, Cedric. First of all, let me just go back a little bit to what my good friend Nelson has been saying. You know, my Nelson forgets to say the law is very clear. But anyway, let me say, yeah, let me say this, Cedric and the entire team that is watching. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. I think that's a common phrase. When you talk about the youth and you still put someone like Raila, Mudavadi, and the likes in the equation, and even the Mount Kenya Foundation, then you are misusing the word youth. These are people who have served their purpose. They cannot solve the modern day problems. They have had their bit, they have done what they have done, and largely they have actually destroyed our nation, our country. So yes, we can have a youth vote. We can have a very strong youth movement with one of us as the youth solving problems that are pertinent to us, that are our like problems. Because the problems of 20, 30 years ago are not the problems of today. And so you don't expect people who've been there solving problems in the 90s coming again in the 20th decade and they want to solve our problems. It's not practical. Now, back to your question. Yes, we have the youth, we have actually numbers, but we lack one thing. And for me, from where I sit, I'm actually very comfortable with this discussion and with this forum. Why? This show, as we call it, the alternative voice, it means we can have an alternative agenda as the youth of Kenya. But first of all, Cedric, this is practically one step in the right direction. The
Yeah.
next big thing is, of course, a couple of small things, many small things that are done and executed in an orderly manner. So this is just one of the steps where we can say the youth are meeting and having you know, their talk. So we need more of this in the country where our youth are first of all informed that if I make a decision, I'm making a decision from a point of information. I know exactly what I'm doing. At this point, the
Exactly.
four of you here and many other Kenyans watching, many other youths watching, at least you have a principle setting in you that there are certain things you cannot do, there are certain things you cannot say, or even there are certain people you cannot vote for because you are informed. So, getting the larger population of the youth being informed and knowing exactly that um, some of these things are not favors, but rather an obligation is one of the things that we should do. And this is one step in the right direction. Having said that, my friend, let me say you've talked about elections in Germany and largely in Europe. I will tell you for a fact the Belgian government here, they have
Yes.
gone for more than 500 days without a government in place. But there's been no vacuum. This one you can go and search and check everywhere. There's been no vacuum in service delivery. There has been no vacuum in safety of the people because even the people who are vying to go into those leadership positions, they are evaluated on the basis of meritocracy. You merit to be there. But for us, we believe in populism. We want to vote for a popular individual. We want to vote for someone that comes from our tribe. We want to vote for someone who can, steal a lot of money. That is where we get it wrong.
Yeah,
The same thing
exactly.
has happened. The same thing has happened in Germany. People vote on the basis of meritocracy. Do you merit to be in that office? Can you deliver? Not on the basis of how can you talk, what can you say, how good can you insult your opponent. That is where we miss the point.
Yeah, thank you. And let me now bring in Okanga from Hungary, and we will be keeping it brief because I can see time is moving, and we also need. I will be later on getting into the questions so that I can also spare some time for the last bit of tonight of our trending topics, which always come to the first segment, but tonight has not. So, Okanga. Talking about the youth and having the majority vote as the youth, that means that we can not just be on the table to make decisions on having leaders, but we can be the leaders ourselves because we have the vote. If we take advantage of that, we can vote our fellow youth into the gubernatorial positions, into MCA positions, member of parliament positions, senatorial positions, name them. But there is a problem here. The IBC was the other day talking about financing, and the figures they are talking about, you have come out of campus 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that kind of money, you don't have it unless you've been doing some other business or you have been really working extra hard. In America, in the USA, when Obama was buying, we were told of the youth and other people donating $1, $2 to finance him to an extent that he won the election uh, at that age that he was, and the fact that he was black as well. Do you think that we as Kenyans can get to that point where we are able to help finance our fellow youth to get into those electoral positions?
From the word go, I'll say no. Then I discuss.
Yeah, go ahead.
In Kenya, politics has been materialized, has been made a business. It has been made monetary. From what you've said, Bwana KK, tell me, and Nelson had mentioned this earlier, if you are telling me that from the salaries an MP or an MCA will earn, then the Electoral Commission tells them that this is the amount you should spend on your campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
That is that the IBC communicated a heavier message than we expected. In fact, in short, it is telling us this is the amount you can steal. As far as we know, the government and the leadership we have in Kenya don't steal beyond this amount once you are elected in power. So when you are spending, go and spend this amount because this is the amount you can steal. Well, I remember the women rep for Migori.
Yes.
Dr. Pamela Obiambo. One day she was in a live TV interview and she said, I know her because she was once my lecturer back in JKUAT, and I know the family fine good, the Obiambo's family. So Dr. Obiambo was saying, she spent around 100 million plus, let me use 100 million, for her to be the women rep. We are not vibrating in the same frequency, Mr. Cedric. We can't be using 100 million per person. You get it? To go and get money. I know the rule is use money to get money, but you can't use 100 million for you to get 50 million. It never, impossible. Tell me where, when, how will it be? You see? And that is how our electoral system and the democracy there has been seen. I mean, people see it as, what is this person having? Which car is he driving? What can he give me before I give him my vote? That is what we are talking about. Nobody cares. In fact, I'm telling you for free. In Kenya, if we were to elect people in terms of speech, I would stand up and say, PLO Lumumba, you are a president without portfolio. Just from speech, of the sense of what somebody is saying in this speech, I'll say, PLO, you are a president without portfolio from the word go. Because in Kenya, we don't listen to what people speak. We only check who is he or who is she affiliated to. Who endorsed who? Is he affiliated to Baba? Is he affiliated to Ruto? If he's affiliated to Ruto, he's coming to me in Homa Bay. He's coming to me in wherever. You can't do that when you are a youth. And the youth who are in politics are now that because that is the trend. If you want to be an MCA, the posters I'm already seeing Azimio la Umoja. I'm already seeing Hustlers Forever. They're already communicating something, that it is not their idea, but they are promoting a certain person's interest. So even if I was to support this youth, I know I'm supporting someone at the top, not the youth down here who wants an MCA, not the youth here who is campaigning for whatever justice. I know I'm supporting someone who is advocating for his also interest, for someone up there. I know very well with the politics, it is what do you bring on the table for me to endorse you? It is true. Because the name in politics, that I'm using someone's name, the better term is the brand. Which brand are you in politics? If I'm using your brand, meaning you have already made yourself to who you become. So for me to use your brand, it is business. I pay you. So it is your brand to sell me, not me selling myself. That is where the rain started.
Thank you. And we need to get into the question. That's very interesting there, that the youth get into politics, but then they are also having their masters. And that's actually what happens in politics. And you shall be answering this question, which I shall be showing up, Wakili. And as you answer that question, also, the youth are getting into politics. We are getting to vote. So, first, let me put up this question first by Daniel Jaka, who is our producer as well, watching all the way from India. And he's speaking about the IEBC and trusting the whole election. If you can allow me read this from my screen here, because the gadget I'm using is not very wide for me to. Should we really trust the process this time, yet the government failed to win the citizens' trust on the legibility of IEBC to carry out the process once again without a glitch? Briefly, Wakili, how do we trust the IEBC? And because even those who are in the race kept quiet along the way about the IEBC, are we supposed to trust them as the youth and go and vote?
Yes, that's a good question, Cedric. But before I respond to it, I must echo the sentiments by my colleagues here, Don and Okengo, that unfortunately the youth in this country, yes, that's the name. Unfortunately, the youth in this country, unfortunately, the youth in this country are not on the decision-making table because our elections are based on money. And by money, I mean millions, if not billions, names, or if you like, political cults. Number 3, parties. So that if I'm from western region, western part of Kenya, I know if I'm not in ODM, I will not succeed. And therefore, the youth are limited to them having an independent idea because they know it will take some much more. Because if somebody is using 500 million to get a women in a position, what will happen to a youth who's just graduated? He has good policies, he has a good manifesto, but he doesn't have even a single million. And when a youth has a single million, is branded as a wash or whatever. So it's a very sad state of affair. But at least we are talking about it and we're giving an alternative voice that let not vote millions, let not vote personality cults, let not vote political parties, let's vote ideas and vote one of us because he suffered for all this long, because none of us is representing us on the decision-making table. We need to be woke enough to realize that we need to send one of us, despite the fact that they'll have no single penny, despite the fact that they're fresh from university or still in the university. Let's give them an opportunity. They'll at least be able to front what they feel because they're part of us. Now, if I proceed to your question, Cedric, whether we should trust IEBC. Don said, yes, elections, he said, in as much as we are trying to say that election process and procurement process and having all these ballot papers and electoral systems to be tamper-proof with security features, from the people who are supposed to be giving us information, they're telling us, even if you have the best security features, the topmost security is the deep state and the system. So how are we supposed to trust IEBC when we are giving them 43 billion to procure these gadgets and all this material for electoral safety, but the people who sit with the president, the people who tell you will be able to sit and agree and say, this will be president, this will be vice president, this will be the prime minister, this will be governor somewhere, are the ones telling you, we have the system on our side. So we no longer need votes. We don't care who sits in the IEBC, who is the chairperson. The only thing we care about is the system. It will take us long if we are going to have such characters uttering such statements to very people in the village who are supposed to queue at 4 a.m. to vote, to be told that even in as much as you're queuing at 4 a.m. to vote, the best security feature and an assurance that your candidate is going to win is the deep state and the system. We cannot say we trust IEBC. We cannot say in this country are going to achieve electoral independence as long as we still have all these people talking and deciding who is the procurement officer, who sits at the Communication Authority of Kenya, who sits at this ICT department, IEBC, and then some of us are waking up very early in the morning to go and vote for a person who feel they're selling the agenda to us. It is quite unfortunate that I cannot say with certainty that IEBC is free, fair, independent, and should be trusted, unless we get an assurance from the very people who've been telling us that presidency in Kenya is a membership club, that particular individuals sit in a particular corner somewhere, sip coffee, and decide this is the person going to say I need.
Thank you very much for that analogy there. And I will be coming back to this discussion because I can see the interest here from the questions is very high. So I think we shall have to finish this conversation and then the bit of the trends to our guests to those who are watching. We shall have a recorded version of it, which will be sent to our social media, because I can see there are so many questions here and the interest is very high in this conversation about the politics and the youth agenda 2022. So let me bring you in here, Dan. We are talking about the deep state and the system, but then there is this key thing which we have already talked about, that we are both youth. We have 70% of the vote, but then in a way, they have, I don't know if it's people or ourselves, if it's these veteran politicians or ourselves, have been put in a certain way that if I am in this region, I am supposed to think this way. If I'm also in this region, I'm supposed to think in this direction. I'm talking about tribes and regions. And then, but then there are those people who have been born in urban centers. They have parents from both tribes. Some even don't know which identity they can give themselves. How can we as youths come together and make sure that we crack this vice and think as people who live in the same era, are affected by the same problems? If it's unemployment, the unemployment of our youth in Nyanza and Mount Kenya and Nairobi and Western is the same. We feel the same pain. How can we make sure that we are able to think in this direction and not according to the regions in which we are?
Okay, thank you very much, Cedric. Allow me to say I have an alternative thought. It might not be so popular, but that is what I think.
Yeah.
I want you to look at this system of governance in this way, and many other people who are watching can also share what I think. Have you ever realized this government or the governments we've had before? Every other time they have something that is keeping the people and the youth engaged in terms of politicking and talking. The answer would be yes. For instance, recently we've had the BBI drama all the way from 2018 up to late this year. Why would one not sit somewhere and try to imagine that some of these things are creations of the so-called the system and the deep state? That, number one, when the government is not performing and we have many unemployed youth, just like Okanga said, that is a recipe for disaster for any country, because it will take a very short time before that, the youth can say or claim their government, their rightful place in the government. These people have a way of making sure we are always busy, engaged, and there is always an us versus them mentality. Talk of BBI, talk of Azimio la Umoja, talk of Okoa Kenya back then, and many other things. But again, look at the apex of leadership in Kenya. tell me if we are not recycling the same people at the top. I mean, Raila has been there, Uhuru has been there, his father has been there, Ruto has been there, Mudavadi has been there. These people have been there. But what if, and this is a very big what if these people go somewhere and they sit and say, you guys, we need to do something to make sure we remain here. We can even pretend we are fighting. We create an us versus them kind of scenario to make sure the youth of Kenya are engaged amongst themselves. We have those who are pro Hustler Nation. We have those who are against Hustler Nation. At the end of the day, like one of us said, the money matters. Because whether you're in opposition, whether you're supporting BBI or not, the moment you're there at the top, you have your hand deep inside the coffers of the nation. But again, back to your question, whether we, the youths, can do something about it. Yes, we can. And one of the many things, like I said from the start, is making sure we are informed. We are thinking and making decisions from a point of information. Otherwise, these guys will keep taking us for a ride. Think of it this way: the better mouse trap fallacy. You know, someone will come and tell you, my trap, this one, will catch the biggest rat. This one is the latest in the market. But at the end of the day, the mouse trap is supposed to catch the trap. I mean, the mouse. It doesn't matter which kind of a mouse trap you have. You hear them saying, some of them now saying, I'm coming with this model, I'm coming with a 24-hour working economy, I'm coming with this. What they're doing in business, we could call it the better mousetrap fallacy. And unfortunately, some of our youth are falling for that because they believe somehow if I say in Hustler Nation, so the man will come. If I say, if I vote for Kalonzo Musyoka, we'll have a 24-hour working economy. At the end of the day, these are things that should happen with or without their sloganeering. So
Thank you.
we need to have conversations where youth are informed. We are thinking and making decisions from a point of information. And we are not thinking tribally, but thinking globally. What is our right? And we have to be very careful when the government is always creating a scenario where we have an us versus them scenario. Because by so doing, they want you to keep engaged so that you have very little time to scrutinize government. If you are idle, you are jobless, and you are a youth, you have enough time to put to task your MP, your MCA, and all other elected leaders in making sure they deliver service. But if we create a BBI, then we have, I'm pro BBI, I'm against BBI. So for 4 years, that is the only conversation we are having, and it collapses. Do you think this is by coincidence? What if, and this is a very big what if, some of these things are a creation of the so-called system and deep state to make sure we, the youth of Kenya, remain wherever we are, we don't advance, and we are only used as a statistic when it comes to voting. So this
Thank you.
is, yeah, this is third state of affairs, and I hope from now going forward, we have to make sure our youth are informed and they know exactly what is their right and what is not their right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. And because we are almost clocking into 1 hour, I'll be taking your final take. Finally, let me start with you, Okanga. Your final take on this, because I can see time has really moved fast, and I am hoping that we will organize another discussion of this kind so that we continue from where we have left it. Your final take to the youth as we get into the 2022 polls and all the campaigning period, Mr. Okanga.
Thank you, Cedric. And there's a viewer who has just commented some very useful information down there. She says that most of the youths have seen politics as a job opportunity. Instead of hustling out there with no future, they rather go and shout, hustler, hustler, Azimio ya Umoja, whatever, and then they be employed, they be bloggers, they be whatever under the umbrellas of those big boys. You know that, and that is the trend. Literally, that is where we are all going, because everything has been materialized into monetary value. All we want is money. But the youth, we have a sound, we have a voice that we must raise, and we must say the truth. Bwana lawyer, let us tell them the truth, not in a court to convince them that there was a murder case and they are not there. Let us be practical with one another as the youth. It is the right time. If in the campus life or in the campus education, there are those people who are really, really, really good leaders. I know you are at one point you must have passed through an institution of higher learning. The leaders there, what if those brains are made the way they were, and then they succeed into the national government or into the county, into the MCA's leadership, without the influence of money, without corruption, without the influence of the big boys behind them? If someone just say, I am self-made, I am coming here, I want to convince you, I, Okanga Tiberius, vote for me because this is what is wrong, not this is what I'm going to do because of this and person. You know, most of the people, even the youths, as I said, those who are coming into the politics right now, they want to be MCAs, they want to be MPs, they will say, vote for me as an MP, then vote for him as a president. That is very wrong. That is where we miss the point. In fact, the equilibrium is not balanced at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your last check, and I'll be getting to our lawyer, our good lawyer here, and our lawyer will tell us, as well as we are saying that the youth needs to come together and avoid the big wigs. But the law is very clear. They are saying you haven't mentioned that. The law is very clear that they have the right to also decide to support someone whom they want to support, as well as they seek support themselves. As you give us your last take, Mr. Mandela.
Yes, I know. Dan would want me to use the term, the law is very clear. Yes, I'll say the law is very clear. You have freedom of organization, freedom of expression. Whatever you feel, the ideology you carry, air it out. Let us listen. Again, in as much as we're advocating that we take these leadership positions, just coming and saying that vote for me because I'm a youth is not enough. We want to hear you say, yes, I'm youthful, but should you elect me, this is what I intend to do in parliament or in the county assembly or even at the top, the executive. Yeah, tell us, yes, I'm youthful, but these are the ideas I have, because we will equally miss the point if we'll say you want to vote for the youth for the mere fact that they're youthful. Let them come up. The ideas and the proposal I'm listening from the panel today, they're very, very good. Should Okanga come back home, Dan should come back home, contest for whichever seat they want to contest, and let people listen to them. Because the only thing they've done right now, even the mainstream media, they only highlight about hustler movement, Azimio la Umoja, and then they'll bring
Thank you. Thank you. Briefly, kindly.
So if I was to make my submissions, my last statement, I'll say let the youth
and make it brief.
Yes, I make it very brief. Let the youth of this country contest for this position. Where I'll be voting, I'll be advocating. I will not care whichever party the person is contesting. Should they allow me to give them an idea of what I think they should go and do, and should they buy the manifesto or the idea we're going to tell them, we'll support them regardless of the party. Now, as I conclude, for us to make sure that we have a level playing ground, we need to amend the Elections Act 2013. We need to make elections very free, not based on party primaries, not based on, and we equally need to amend the law to make sure that, in as much as, in the question, Cedric, yeah, the law is very clear. Women, children, and the youth are called special interest group. We have specific position reserved for women called women representative. We have position reserved for people with disability. We have positions for people from marginalized areas. We equally want an exact number of youthful people who will be nominated in
Yes.
Parliament, in Senate, in County Assembly, and even in the Executive, anchored within the law, so that should you fail to nominate 10 people as by the law, who should be under the age of 35, then we take issue with you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It has been a very nice discussion. The panel has been good. I look forward to having another discussion with Dan and Akango. Thank you so much.
We will sure have another of this discussion, and I will not be fair if I lock Dan out for his last take. But I can see time time has really moved, and you'll just be brief. So for your last take, I have gone into the booth for voting on the last day as a youth. What should come to my mind before I make that choice with my pen?
Thank you very much, Cedric. First of all, I hope we can have this conversation once again in future, and actually we can prolong the time so that 1 hour is not enough. Second, let me say I'm inviting all the youth, the great people of the Kenyan nation. Next year, as we go to the ballot, don't vote for the populism, for the populist. Rather, vote for an idea. It might not happen next year that your candidate, whom you think rightfully deserves that particular seat, might win, but eventually we will get there, one step at a time. Lastly, I want to speak to the moral fabric of our nation and values. We, the youth, we have what it takes. We need to rethink our strategy. We need to work on our moral fabric. We need to avoid following people for handouts and rather think of how we would like tomorrow to look like. And this means making small steps at a time. Remember, like I said before, the next big thing are a couple of small things that we are doing right now. This one being one among them. So thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. I look forward to having you again discussing a different topic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that last take of yours about us making our decisions. Thanks everyone who has tuned into the show tonight, and for all of you for coming into this discussion as well. We are having, as you can see that banner running down there, you can subscribe to our social media platforms at The Alternative Voice on all of them. And as well, if you need to do some advertisements with us, kindly get into our inbox on our social media platforms. Thank you to our guests. It has been a great conversation. We shall do it another time. And for our trends section, we are having a recording, and it shall be uploaded on our social media in a few minutes' time. So look out on our social media for this week's trends. Thank you for tuning into the conversation. See you next week. My name is KK Cedric.
Thank you very much.
It's Trends O'Clock. This is Trends KE with KK Cedric.